When Mrs. Asa got back home, she didn't waste much time. She slaughtered Emmanuel like a meat that night so that customer will not be able to find any trace of it. She prepared all her ingredients and mixed the salt the old man gave her. The following morning, Mrs. Asa woke up early, feeling hopeful. She quickly got dressed and headed to her restaurant. She started cooking immediately, preparing for the day's customers. As the day went on, customers started coming in, one after the other. They were all raving about the food, saying it was the best they had ever tasted. Mrs. Asa was thrilled, knowing that the old man's charm was working. Once upon a time, there lived a woman named Mrs. Asa. She lived together with her husband, Mr. Asa, in a small village named Akito in the eastern part of Nigeria. Akito was a peaceful village surrounded by farms and forests. The villagers were friendly and lived in harmony with one another. Mrs. Asa and her husband, Mr. Asa, were a happy couple. They had been married for over a year and they were happy to be together. Mr. Asa was a hard-working farmer who spent most of his days on the farm, working tirelessly to provide for his family. One fateful day, disaster struck. Mr. Asa went to the farm with his friends, but he didn't return home. His friends came back to the village, looking worried and scared. What happened? Mrs. Asa asked, feeling a sense of unease. We were working on the farm, one of Asa's friends explained. Asa went to fetch water from the stream, but he didn't come back. We searched for him everywhere, but we couldn't find him. Mrs. Asa was shocked and devastated. She couldn't believe that her husband was gone. She thought to herself, Asa has been a farmer for many years. He knows the farm like the back of his hand. There's no way he could have gotten lost or hurt. Mrs. Asa didn't believe the story Asa's friends told her. She thought they were hiding something from her. She felt a sense of anger and betrayal. The following day, Mrs. Asa decided to take matters into her own hands. She wanted to find out what had really happened to her husband. So, she secretly went to the farm where her husband had gone missing. Mrs. Asa walked through the farm, calling out her husband's name. "Honey, where are you?" she shouted. "Honey, please speak to me if you're hearing me." But there was no response. The only sound was the rustling of leaves and the chirping of birds. Mrs. Asa kept walking, her heart beating faster with every step. As she walked deeper into the farm, she noticed something on the ground. It was a piece of cloth, stained with blood. Mrs. Asa's heart skipped a beat as she realized that the cloth was the same one her husband had worn to the farm on the day he went missing. Mrs. Asa was shocked. She felt like she had been punched in the gut. Tears started streaming down her eyes as she realized that her husband had been killed, but as she stood there, crying and feeling helpless, a feeling of anger started to rise up inside her. She knew that her husband's friends had killed him. She was sure of it. Mrs. Asa made a promise to herself that day. She vowed to take revenge on her husband's friends. She would make sure they paid for what they had done. As she stood there, feeling angry and hurt, Mrs. Asa knew that her life would never be the same again. She had lost the love of her life, and now she felt she was left alone in the world after the death of Mrs. Asa's husband. She knew she had to do something to take care of herself. She couldn't rely on others to provide for her, and she needed to find a way to earn a living. Mrs. Asa thought for a while, trying to come up with a plan. She had always been a good cook, and people in the village loved her food. So, she decided to open a small restaurant in the village. Mrs. Asa worked hard to get the restaurant ready. She borrowed some money from her friends and family to buy the necessary equipment and ingredients. She spent long hours cooking and preparing food, hoping that customers would come. At first, things seemed promising. People in the village came to try Mrs. Asa's food, and they loved it. But as time went on, the number of customers started to dwindle. Mrs. Asa was left with a lot of food that she couldn't sell. After a few months of struggling, Mrs. Asa felt like giving up. She was tired of working hard every day, only to have very few customers. She was starting to lose hope. But then she thought about her situation. If she stopped working, she wouldn't be able to take care of herself. She wouldn't be able to afford food or pay her rent. She knew that she had to keep going, no matter how hard it got. Mrs. Asa took a deep breath and decided to keep fighting. She thought of new ways to attract customers, like offering discounts or trying out new recipes. She was determined to make her restaurant a success, no matter what it took. As she worked hard to keep her restaurant going, Mrs. Asa couldn't help but think about her husband's death. She still didn't know what had really happened to him, and she was determined to find out. Ever since Mrs. Asa opened her new restaurant, she had been struggling to make ends meet. Her restaurant was not doing well, and she was desperate for a solution. One day, she thought about visiting an herbalist. She had heard that he was a powerful man who could help her with her problems. So, Mrs. Asa went to the herbalist's chamber. The old man was sitting on a mat, surrounded by strange objects and herbs. Mrs. Asa greeted him and told him that she needed his help. The old man looked at her with piercing eyes. "I already know what you came for," he said. "You can go straight to the point." Mrs. Asa was shocked. She wondered how the old man knew what she came for. She composed herself and told him that she needed to make sales in her business. Customers were not coming like before. The old man smiled a little. "Is that the only thing you need?" he asked. Mrs. Asa replied that it was all she needed for now. The old man told her that if she was ready to do anything he said, he could help her. Mrs. Asa agreed, eager to find a solution to her problems. The old man told her that she needed to add something special to her cooking. Mrs. Asa looked curious, expecting the old man to reveal the secret ingredient. But what he said next shocked her to her core. "You need to start adding the body meat of children to your cooking," the old man said. Mrs. Asa was taken aback. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. But she knew she had to do what the old man said if she wanted to save her business. The old man continued, "You must make sure that nobody sees you, most especially young children. The day anybody sees you, you will run mad forever." Mrs. Asa felt a chill run down her spine. She knew that she was taking a huge risk, but she was desperate. She agreed to do what the old man said, promising to keep it a secret. The old man gave her a small container of salt. "Add this to your pot after killing any child," he instructed. Mrs. Asa took the container, feeling a sense of trepidation. She knew that she was crossing a line, but she was determined to save her business. As she left the old man's chamber, Mrs. Asa felt a sense of unease. She knew that she had made a pact with a dark and sinister force, but she was willing to do whatever it took to succeed. When Mrs. Asa arrived that day, she happy and a little bit concerned about the task ahead. Suddenly, the thought of avenging her husband's death came into her mind. "I will use Mr. Ise and Mr. Aunu children for this task," she thought within herself. "At least, that will stand as my own gain after killing my husband," she said. "But his will I go about with this? It's not going to be an easy thing for me," she said to herself. Later in the night, Mrs. Asa decided to take a walk to Mr. Ise's house. She pretended as if she was going out, but she had a plan to kidnap any of Mr. Ise's son. On her way, she saw Emmanuel, Mr. Ise's first son, coming back from an errand. It looks as if his parents had sent him to get something. Mrs. Asa approached him. She did something mysterious and Emmanuel became dumb. He started following her until they got to Mrs. Asa's home. When Mrs. Asa got back home, she didn't waste much time. She slaughtered Emmanuel like a meat that night so that customer will not be able to find any trace of it. She prepared all her ingredients and mixed the salt the old man gave her. The following morning, Mrs. Asa woke up early, feeling hopeful. She quickly got dressed and headed to her restaurant. She started cooking immediately, preparing for the day's customers. As the day went on, customers started coming in, one after the other. They were all raving about the food, saying it was the best they had ever tasted. Mrs. Asa was thrilled, knowing that the old man's charm was working. From that day on, Mrs. Asa's restaurant started booming. Customers were coming from all over, eager to taste her delicious food. Mrs. Asa was making more money than she had ever made before, and she was grateful to the old man for his help. But despite her success, Mrs. Asa couldn't shake off the feeling that something was off. She knew that the old man's charm had come with a steep price, and she wondered what the consequences would be. One faithful day, Mr. Ise came to Mrs. Asa's house. He looks very sad and worried. He asked her if she had seen his son. "What do you mean? Am I your son's keeper?" Mrs. Asa asked as if she don't know anything about him. "I'm sorry, it's just that my son suddenly got missing since 2 days night, so I have been going around asking the neighborhood," Mr. Ise replied. "Okay, I don't know where he is, maybe you should check other compound," Mrs. Asa said, try to sound innocent. Mr. Ise felt sad unknowingly to him that Mrs. Asa was behind the disappearance of his son. This was how Mrs. Asa continued. Not only did she kill Mr. Ise-san, she will also killed Mr. Auna's son and sell it in her restaurant and nobody have idea about it. Her restaurant was booming. Customers kept coming in, day and evening. Within a few months, she was known in all the communities in the village. Everyone wished to have a taste of her delicious food. One day, a young lady named Emily heard about Mrs. S's food. She had heard how sweet it was. So she decided to give it a try. When Emily got to Mrs. S's restaurant, they greeted each other warmly. Emily ordered a plate of food with meat inside. Mrs. Asa smiled and told her it would be ready soon. As Emily waited for her food, she couldn't help but notice how busy the restaurant was. There were people of all ages, eating and chatting. The atmosphere was lively and welcoming. Finally, Mrs. Asa brought Emily's food. Emily was excited to take a bite. As she continued eating, she saw a strange thing that looks like an human hand. She was shocked but she couldn't alarm other customers because it was her first time and she don't really know much about the culture, but she couldn't just let it go. She decided to know her house and also further her investigation on how she cook her food. Later in the evening, after Mrs. Asa had closed for the day, Emily decided to follow her home secretly. Her first mission was to know where Mrs. Asa lived, and secondly, how she cooked her food. Mrs. Asa walked home, unaware that Emily was following her. Emily kept a safe distance, making sure not to be seen. When Mrs. Asa got home, she walked in, still unaware that Emily was watching her. Emily stood at the backyard, looking through every corner of the window. She was determined to find out what Mrs. Asa was hiding. After a few minutes of searching, Emily finally found a window where she could see clearly. She peeped through the window, and what she saw made her blood run cold. Mrs. Asa was cutting up something that looked like a human body. Emily felt a wave of nausea wash over her. She couldn't believe that she had eaten food cooked by this woman. As Emily continued to watch, Mrs. Asa started to prepare a pot of stew. She added all sorts of spices and herbs, and then she added the cut-up body parts. Emily felt sick to her stomach. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. Mrs. Asa cooked the stew for hours, and the smell of it filled the air. Emily's stomach was growling, but she couldn't eat. She was too disgusted by what she had seen. She ran as fast as she could to alert the other villagers. She told them everything she had seen, from the body parts to the stew. The villagers were shocked and outraged. They quickly gathered together, both young and old, and marched to Mrs. Asa's house. They surrounded the house, shouting and demanding that Mrs. Asa come out. Mrs. Asa was shocked and didn't know what to do. She had never been caught before, and she didn't know how to react. It can't be, she thought to herself. How did they find out? But she didn't have time to think about it for long. The villagers were getting angrier by the minute, and they were demanding that she come out. Mrs. Asa slowly opened the door and came out. She looked around at the angry faces, and she knew that she was in trouble. Her secret was no longer a secret, and she didn't know what was going to happen next. The villagers started shouting and accusing her of all sorts of terrible things. Mrs. Asa tried to defend herself, but it was no use. The villagers had already made up their minds about her. Emily told the villagers to instruct Mrs. Asa to open her room and ignore her lies. Mrs. Asa looked surprised, wondering how Emily knew about her secret. She felt like grabbing Emily and struggling with her to death, but she couldn't. The villagers forced Mrs. Asa to open all the rooms in her house. The villagers were shocked at what they saw. Mrs. Asa then knelt down and started confessing to all her evil deeds. She explained how she had been killing young children and using them to cook her food, which she then sold to the villagers at her restaurant. She also confessed that she used Mr. Ise and Mr. Auna's children to cook her food. She further explained that she sought revenge because she believed Mr. Ise and Mr. Auna had killed her husband. Everyone looked shocked and was short of words. Mr. Ise and Mr. Auna quickly stepped forward and announced to the villagers that they didn't kill Mrs. Asa's husband. They further explained that they had been attacked that day they went to farm and Mr. Asa died in the process, and they both managed to escape. After Mrs. Asa made her confession, she suddenly remembered the words of the old man and ran mad instantly. The villagers, outraged and frightened by her actions, quickly threw her out of the village. As Mrs. Asa was dragged away, the villagers couldn't help but feel a sense of relief wash over them. From that onward, they became cautious while eating outside while completely stop eating. I hope you enjoy and learn a lot from this interesting story. Please like, comment and subscribe to our channel so you will notified anytime we post new video. Thank you and God. When Mrs. Asa got back home, she didn't waste much time. She slaughtered Emmanuel like a meat that night so that customer will not be able to find any trace of it. She prepared all her ingredients and mixed the salt the old man gave her. The following morning, Mrs. Asa woke up early, feeling hopeful. She quickly got dressed and headed to her restaurant. She started cooking immediately, preparing for the day's customers. As the day went on, customers started coming in, one after the other. They were all raving about the food, saying it was the best they had ever tasted. Mrs. Asa was thrilled, knowing that the old man's charm was working. The villagers started shouting and accusing her of all sorts of terrible things. Mrs. Asa tried to defend herself, but it was no use. The villagers had already made up their minds about her. Emily told the villagers to instruct Mrs. Asa to open her room and ignore her lies. Mrs. Asa looked surprised, wondering how Emily knew about her secret. She felt like grabbing Emily and struggling with her to death, but she couldn't. The villagers forced Mrs. Asa to open all the rooms in her house. The villagers were shocked at what they saw. Mrs. Asa then knelt down and started confessing to all her evil deeds. She explained how she had been killing young children and using them to cook her food, which she then sold to the villagers at her restaurant. She also confessed that she used Mr. Ise and Mr. Auna's children to cook her food. She further explained that she sought revenge because she believed Mr. Ise and Mr. Auna had killed her husband. Everyone looked shocked and was short of words. Mr. Ise and Mr. Auna quickly stepped forward and announced to the villagers that they didn't kill Mrs. Asa's husband. They further explained that they had been attacked that day they went to farm and Mr. Asa died in the process, and they both managed to escape. After Mrs. Asa made her confession, she suddenly remembered the words of the old man and ran mad instantly. The villagers, outraged and frightened by her actions, quickly threw her out of the village. As Mrs. Asa continued her journey, her madness only seemed to worsen. She wandered from village to village, causing a stir wherever she went. People would point and laugh, while others would run away in fear. One day, Mrs. Asa arrived in a new village. She sat down on the ground in a bush along the road, laughing to herself and playing with leaves. Her hair was disheveled, and her clothes were torn and dirty. As she sat there, a young man and woman, Ush and Ada, walked by. They were siblings, and they had been out running errands for their mother. When they saw Mrs. Asa, they immediately felt a pang of compassion. Ada, who was the more empathetic of the two, couldn't bear to pass by Mrs. Asa without helping her. Ush, we have to do something, she said, tugging on her brother's arm. Ush nodded in agreement. I'll go talk to the village chief priest, he said. He's an elderly wise man who knows how to handle situations like this. Ada nodded and stayed with Mrs. Asa, watching her as she continued to laugh and play with leaves. Mrs. Asa didn't seem to notice Ada's presence, but Ada didn't mind. She was just happy to be able to help. Meanwhile, Ush made his way to the village chief priest's house. He found the old man sitting on a stool, surrounded by various artifacts and trinkets. Chief priest, Ush said, bowing his head in respect. We found a woman by the roadside. She's acting strangely, and we don't know what to do. The chief priest looked up at Ush, his eyes twinkling with wisdom. I think I know who you might be talking about, he said. Bring her to me, and I'll see what I can do. Ush explained the situation to the chief priest. Sir, my sister, and I won't be able to bring her here. It seems like the woman is insane, and it would be difficult for us to bring her. The chief priest took a deep breath, understanding Ush's words. He nodded thoughtfully and then went inside his chamber. He came out with a small bag of white powder. Take this, the chief priest said, handing the bag to Ush. When you get to where she is, sprinkle this powder on her. Her madness will leave her for a while, and she will lose her strength. Then you can bring her here. Ush's eyes widened with surprise. Really? This powder can do that? He asked. The chief priest nodded. Yes, it's a special powder that has been passed down through our ancestors. It has the power to calm the mind and body. But you must use it carefully and only when necessary. Ush thanked the chief priest and took the powder. He left immediately to meet his sister and the mad woman. As he walked, he felt a sense of hope that they might be able to help Mrs. Asa after all. When Ush arrived at the spot where he had left Ada and Mrs. Asa, he saw that Ada was still watching over Mrs. Asa. Mrs. Asa was still laughing and playing with leaves, completely unaware of her surroundings. Ush approached them quietly and carefully. He didn't want to startle Mrs. Asa and make her situation worse. He looked at Ada and nodded, indicating that he had gotten the powder from the chief priest. Ada nodded back, and Ush carefully sprinkled the powder on Mrs. Asa. At first, nothing seemed to happen. But then, Mrs. Asa's laughter began to fade away, and she looked around, confused. What's going on? She stammered. Ada smiled and took Mrs. Asa's hand. Don't worry, ma'am. We're here to help you. Let's take you to see the chief priest. He can help you get better. Mrs. Asa looked at Ada and Ush uncertainly, but she didn't resist as they helped her to her feet. With Ada on one side and Ush on the other, they slowly made their way back to the chief priest's house. As they walked, Mrs. Asa's body grew weaker and weaker. The powder that Ush had sprinkled on her was taking effect, calming her mind and body. After a while, they arrived at the chief priest's house. The chief priest welcomed them warmly and thanked Ush and Ada for bringing Mrs. Asa to him. Don't worry, she will be fine, the chief priest said, smiling reassuringly. Leave her with me, and come back in 2 days. She will undergo spiritual cleansing, and I'm sure she will be back to normal soon. Ush and Ada were relieved to hear the chief priest's words. They thanked him and left Mrs. Asa in his care. The next day, Ush and Ada went about their daily routine, but they couldn't stop thinking about Mrs. Asa. They wondered how she was doing and whether the spiritual cleansing was working. They couldn't wait to go back to the chief priest's house and see Mrs. Asa again. They hoped that she would be back to normal, and that they would be able to see the real Mrs. Asa, not the mad woman they had met by the roadside. After 2 days, Mrs. Asa became normal again. She regained her senses and was able to think clearly. She was grateful to the chief priest and Ush and Ada for their help. But as she reflected on her past, Mrs. Asa realized that she didn't want to go back to her village. She was ashamed of her behavior and didn't want to face the people she had hurt. So, she decided to stay in the new village. She found a small abandoned house on the outskirts of the village and made it her home. She managed to take care of herself, finding food and water in the nearby forest. As she settled into her new life, Mrs. Asa met a man named Mr. Emeka. He was handsome, healthy, and hardworking. He had a kind heart and was immediately drawn to Mrs. Asa. 1 week after they met, Mr. Emeka proposed to Mrs. Asa. He told her that he loved her and wanted to spend the rest of his life with her. Mrs. Asa was overjoyed. She had never thought that she would find love again. She accepted Mr. Emeka's proposal, and they began making plans for their wedding. Mrs. Asa relocated from the abandoned house and started living with Mr. Emeka. They lived together while they processed their marriage ceremony. But one day, while they were sitting in the living room, Mr. Emeka asked Mrs. Asa about her parents and her past. Mrs. Asa was taken aback by the question. She became frightened and didn't know what to say. She lied about her parents and her past, telling Mr. Emeka that they were dead and that she had grown up in an orphanage. Mr. Emeka believed her, and he didn't press her for more information. All he cared about was that he loved Mrs. Asa and wanted to spend the rest of his life with her. He didn't need to know about her past. But Mrs. Asa felt guilty for lying to him. She knew that she would have to tell him the truth eventually. As they continued to make plans for their wedding, Mrs. Asa couldn't shake off the feeling that she was living a lie. She knew that she had to confess to Mr. Emeka, but she was afraid of losing him. A few weeks later, Mr. Emeka and Mrs. Asa had their wedding, and Mrs. Asa finally became Mrs. Emeka. They were happy and excited to start their new life together. They lived together in a beautiful house, and they enjoyed each other's company. Mr. Emeka was a loving and caring husband, and Mrs. Emeka was a happy and contented wife. But after their marriage, something strange began to happen. Every night, Mrs. Emeka would often have a nightmare, and a scary one for that matter. She would often see young children chasing her with weapons, and she would wake up, afraid and scared. Her husband would ask her what the problem was, but she couldn't understand and explain the dream. She would just shake her head and tell him that it was just a bad dream. But the nightmares continued, and Mrs. Emeka was getting worried. She didn't know what was causing the nightmares, and she didn't know how to stop them. One night, Mr. Emeka had an idea. Let's pray together every night before we go to bed, he said. Maybe that will help to stop the bad dreams. Mrs. Emeka agreed, and they started praying together every night. They would hold hands and pray to God to protect them from harm and to give them peace. Unfortunately for Mrs. Emika, after trying all-night prayers, the bad dreams kept coming. It looked as if it was even getting worse. She would wake up in the middle of the night, sweating and shaking with fear. One faithful day, they decided to see their pastor, Pastor Michael. He was a respected and humble man of God. It was said that he had the gift of vision and could interpret dreams, so they decided to meet him. When they got to his office, they exchanged pleasantries before any further discussions. Mrs. Emika then explained her nightmares to Pastor Michael, how she usually saw young children chasing her with weapons, saying they would kill her. Pastor Michael took a deep breath, waiting for the Holy Spirit to speak to him. After a while, he finally spoke. "Do you have a child?" Pastor Michael asked. "No, sir," Mrs. Emika replied. "Have you, by any means, caused any child pain?" Pastor Michael asked. "Any child?" "No, sir, I don't think so," Mrs. Emika replied, forgotten so soon how she usually used children to cook her food and sell it to the villagers. Pastor Michael looked at her with a serious expression. "Well, the Holy Spirit cannot lie. I will give you time to think about it and give me feedback whenever you remember." Mr. and Mrs. Emika were stood in surprise, not knowing what to do next. They left the pastor's office and went home to think about it. As they walked home, Mrs. Emika couldn't shake off the feeling that Pastor Michael's words had stirred up inside her. She knew that she had done something wrong in the past, but she couldn't quite put her finger on what it was. Late in the night, Mr. Emika and his wife sat in their room, discussing the events of the day. Mr. Emika asked his wife about what the pastor had said, and if she had remembered any incident of when she maltreated any child before. Mrs. Emika sat there, her mind racing with thoughts of her past. She recalled when she was still in her former village, how she cooked and sold food to the villagers, using children to help her. But she was afraid to tell her husband, wondering how he would feel if he heard it. As she sat there, lost in thought, Mr. Emika noticed that she was silent and looked as if she was carried away. All of a sudden, tears started running down from her eyes. Her husband looked shocked, holding her closely and starting to console her. "What's wrong, my dear?" Mr. Emika asked, his voice filled with concern. "What's bothering you?" Mrs. Emika knew that she couldn't hide it any longer. She had to say the truth so she could be free. She took a deep breath and looked at her husband, starting to confess to him. "I have something to tell you," she said, her voice shaking. "Something that I've been hiding from you. I'm not the person you think I am. I've done some terrible things in my past." Mr. Emika's eyes widened in shock as his wife continued to confess. She told him everything, from how she used children to cook and sell food, to how she had run away from her village and started a new life. Mr. Emika was shocked and short of words. He couldn't sleep through the night because of his wife's confession. It shocked him to the bone. He loved his wife and couldn't just possibly leave her because of her past. He just felt sad and worried. As the night wore on, Mr. Emika couldn't help but think about his wife's past. He wondered how she could have done such terrible things, and how she could have kept it a secret for so long. Despite his shock and sadness, Mr. Emika knew that he had to be strong for his wife. He knew that she needed his support and love, and he was determined to give it to her. The following morning, Mr. Emika and his wife went to see Pastor Michael. Pastor Michael was surprised to see them so early and asked if Mrs. Emika had remembered something. "Yes, Pastor," Mr. Emika replied, as Mrs. Emika took over from him and started confessing all her past to Pastor Michael. She told him everything, from how she used children to cook and sell food, to how she had run away from her village and started a new life. Pastor Michael was surprised and short of words. He listened attentively as Mrs. Emika poured out her heart, telling him all her secrets. After a while, Pastor Michael spoke up. "That's the reason why children are always chasing you in your dreams," he said. "It's because of the way you heard them. But I want you to know that there's hope for you. You can be forgiven and set free." Mrs. Emika regretted all her actions. She felt a deep sense of sorrow and remorse for what she had done. She asked Pastor Michael if there was any way out. Pastor Michael smiled and said, "There's a way, and the only way is Jesus, the Son of God. If you can accept Jesus today, the Lord will show you mercy and bring deliverance to your soul." Without wasting much time, Mrs. Emika renounced all her past and gave her life to Jesus. She prayed a prayer of repentance, asking God to forgive her for all her sins. After that, Pastor Michael prayed a short prayer for her and assured her that she was free. "You are a new creation in Christ," he said. "Your past is forgiven, and you have a bright future ahead of you." Mr. and Mrs. Emeka left Pastor Michael's office, feeling a sense of hope and satisfaction. They knew that Mrs. Emeka's life had changed for good, and that she would never be the same again. From that day on, Mrs. Emeka's life was transformed. She stopped having bad dreams, and she felt a sense of peace and joy that she had never felt before. She and her husband started attending church regularly, and they grew in their faith. Mrs. Emeka also started to make amends for her past mistakes. She started helping out at a local orphanage, where she could care for children who were in need. She also started sharing her testimony with others, telling them about how God had forgiven her and set her free. I hope you enjoy and learn a lot from this interesting story. Please like, comment and subscribe to our channel so you will notified anytime we post new video. Thank you and God